Dear audience, dear colleagues, good morning, good evening. I'm happy to welcome all of you after a short Christmas break to the third seminar in our series, Rethinking Ukraine's Environment, War, Ecocide and Beyond. We are very grateful to the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies for providing support and a platform for our seminar series. Today's seminar is entitled Animals in and Beyond Wartime. Non-human beings like humans have also been extensively affected by the war. Animals are freezing, stray dogs and birds get tangled in anti-drone netting. Many animals drowned after the Kakhovka Dam was destroyed, while others have died in shelters due to bombing. They were evacuated, they were left, they became symbols. We have three speakers who come from different fields and will approach the topic from their unique areas of expertise. Our distinguished speakers were given the freedom to choose their own angles when addressing the issue of animals in the context of the war and beyond. I would like to welcome Olha Matsko, who joins us from Kyiv. Olha is a Ukrainian animal rights and environmental advocate and a long-standing member of the UA Animals movement. Since 2018, she has worked at the intersection of animal protection and public policy, with particular attention to the impact of armed conflicts on non-human lives. She is currently engaged in international advocacy efforts, focusing on the environmental and animal-related consequences of Russia's war against Ukraine. Our second speaker is Tanya Richardson. She is an environmental anthropologist and associate professor in the Department of Global Studies at Wilfrid Laurier University, Canada. Since 2018, she has been researching the breeding, conservation, and trading of Carpathian honeybees in Ukraine and beyond. She has also written about a relict population of Danube newts displaced by the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam. And last but not least, our third speaker is Arita Holmberg. She is an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at the Swedish Defense University, Stockholm. She has published on security and defense transformation, military organizations, the resistance, and most recently on animals and war. Her current research concerns the geopolitics of climate change, health crisis, and the relationship between animals, security, and war. I would like to remind you about the format of this seminar. The seminar will last 1.5 hours, and with each presentation allotted 20 minutes, followed by a 30-minute Q&A session. So I would like to ask our audience, our participants, to write your comments, your reflections, your ideas in the Q&A section, and then I will read out your comments. And before we begin the academic part of the seminar, and before I hand the floor over to our distinguished speakers, I would like to make a brief announcement. I encourage all participants to support UA Animals, an incredible organization that is making a real difference. And we were not prompted or paid to make this announcement, but decided to share it with you on our own initiative. And now I would like to warmly welcome Olha and give the word to you. Olha, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here with you today. And I already thank you for your attention. And I'm really touched that you decided to make an announcement about the ability to help your animals. So I'm going to tell you about the situation for animals nowadays here in Ukraine, animals in and beyond the wartime, and what we actually do with this and what everyone can do as well. A little bit about the story of the animals. The NGO sector grew really much during the full-scale invasion in Ukraine. The animals actually existed far before that. We started in 2016 from the advocacy for animal-free circuses. You can see the photo with the red building. This is the Animal Rights March in Kyiv, which gathered more than 3,000 of people and 30 other cities as well. And some important moments during our activity as our national marches, which led to the general work during the year from March to March. We tried to change the laws for animals here in Ukraine. We succeeded in that in many, many fields. We launched the huge anti-fur campaign, and we had the adoption of the law which increased the penalties for animal cruelty and so on. So animals from 2016 until 2022 was already a very big and influential movement, which task number one was to change the opinion of people about animals and cruelty, which we can see in circuses, veterinarians, contract zoos, and so on. But in 2022, full-scale invasion came to Ukraine, and the only option we saw that we have to do something about that. And having absolutely no team, there was like 3 people on that moment in animals, and the rest was all volunteer-based to create those changes, having, of course, no experience in any kind of circumstances like this. We have started to save animals from war. So for today, our mission increased. We also try to reduce animal suffering and deaths caused both by war and by human cruelty. And of course, our vision is to see Ukraine free from animal cruelty. And a little story, which will be the first point on how animals are treated during the war. This man, very old man, his name is Volodymyr. He was found in the middle of nowhere, walking on the street with the buildings around him destroyed and no people who actually could help him. He was carrying his dog and 3 cows of him. He actually refused to leave these animals in Toretsk. Toretsk is a small village which is situated on the east of Ukraine. He carried those animals to Poltava. It is approximately around 300 kilometers, which is around 3 full days if you don't sleep and you just walk. And he was ready to do it, just not to leave those animals without help in Toretsk. Then our team actually has found out about him through some media and social media posts, and we helped him. We made the outreach, and we have brought those animals together with him and helped with some funding for him to be able to keep those animals and live his life. So it showed us that when people want to evacuate, the system works the way that they can be evacuated, but not their animals. And this is a really very big problem. We will touch it later. Another story. To continue this topic is just no story, just few pictures to show. When early in 2022, our team started to make evacuation missions for animals, we saw forests being burned and towns and cities being totally destroyed. And of course, wild nature is also suffering from it, and the whole ecosystems are being destroyed. So we speak not only about animals which people own, we speak on the left side about wild animals, about the ecosystems which are totally destroyed and which will take ages to be renewed, and what scientists say that many areas will never be the way they existed before, and the unique species which were already in the Red Book will be destroyed, and we know already a few hundreds of those species which are unique not only for Ukraine but for the whole world are being destroyed right now as well. And on the right hand, we can see the city which is empty, which means no animals who lived also in the city could survive. Another point which I cannot forget to tell about this, because these are pictures from Kakhovka Dam explosion. Kakhovka Dam was ruined by Russians, and they knew that the huge territory, as you can see on the right, will be covered with the water. And on the left, you are trying to save animals as well. Your animals team was also there. And we had to invent the whole system with boats and the floods and work out this the same day when it happened. Also, there was a small zoo situated on this territory, and we were trying to evacuate it, but it was all surrounded by mines. It was mined by Russians, and there was one narrow part from the zoo, and people who worked there, they were able to hide some small animals under their clothes and bring those animals to their homes. The rest of the animals, which were bigger and not possible to hide, were left in the zoo. And we said then that we are ready to evacuate those animals and the zoo. And people who worked in the zoo were trying to make an agreement with Russian soldiers and to evacuate those animals, but they didn't allow to do it. So the moment when the explosion happened, they actually knew about the zoo, and the whole zoo also was totally covered with water. Only birds who could both fly and swim survived, like ducks and so on. The rest were left there. The point I want to say is that ecological crimes, including those which are called ecocide, which have a huge scale and very long-term consequences. It is not a side effect of the war. It is actually one of the targets which Russians have. That's why the prosecutor's office, they're also documenting those crimes. And one day we hope we will make Russia pay for them. So from these two previous slides, we can see that animals are not protected by international humanitarian law. And the rescue of those animals is truly the task of people, of NGOs, of volunteers, just those who want to become someone's rescue for one moment, one day, or for months, or for years, as it's happening right now. When we saw this, of course, we started to do whatever we can, and within the half of the year and the first year, the team expanded very much. Nowadays, if you remember, it was 3 of us. Nowadays, there are 50 people in New Animals team, and all these people, they appeared already in 2022. I mean, not the same people, I mean the amount of people and the teams who work with different things. Nowadays, we have these projects like evacuation of animals, providing of food and medication, veterinarian missions, reconstruction of shelters which were ruined by Russians, and those which weren't, but which funded, so they are able to accept those animals which are evacuated. And also we cooperate with national parks, trying to save as many animals from the wildlife as it's possible. These are the results. I opened our report from 2025, and 155,000 of animals received some assistance from us in 2022. And if we see the numbers from the beginning of full-scale invasion, now more than 9,000 thousands of animals were evacuated by us. We speak both about domestic cats and dogs, cows and sheep, and wild animals, let's say from contact zoos or just normal zoos or private properties, and so on. When we saw this amount of animals, we started a sterilization program, because a lot of animals are in the streets. Even before the war, we had the huge problem with that, as in Ukraine, we don't have the obligatory for people to sterilize animals, and the obligation to register them. So that's why we had a lot of animals in the streets. And nowadays, all the shelters in Ukraine, they are like twice full with the normal capacity they're able to have. And of course, we needed to start this transition program so we can regulate the amount of animals which are in the streets. We provide food, and more than 1,000 of tons was delivered. We still continue to do this. We have our storage here in Kyiv, so we transported humanitarian aid mostly from Europe, or we sometimes buy by ourselves here in Ukraine, and then already from Kyiv it goes to all the areas which need the support the most. And of course, we rebuild shelters. So when it's safe enough and we know that the territory is already liberated by Ukrainians, then we rebuild what was ruined by Russians, including shelters for stray animals and including some buildings for wild animals, for example, for the bird rehabilitation center and so on. Some moment I can't click my presentation and I have to start it over. So the amount of ask for help is really, really big. So nowadays we have to concentrate on the areas which you can see with the yellow sign on the map. These are the regions which are under attack, which means that people and animals suffer there the most. So we receive the information from people who are on these territories, and we work with the evacuation from those territories to the safer parts of Ukraine. Veterinarian missions we're having on frontline areas. And yeah, this is our focus because it is simply not possible to have everyone, although all the territories of Ukraine are really highly impacted by war nowadays. As you know, no electricity here in Ukraine. This is really luck that you can see me in the light right now. But anyway, it's not possible to help everyone, as I said, so we need to concentrate it on the territories which are most affected. So evacuation missions are ongoing right now as well. Here you can see my colleague who looks really very happy, but actually this is a very risky operation always. Recently, our car was hit by the drone, Russian drone, from the second time. All animals are luckily alive, as well as people, and it was just the question of their preparation. We cooperate with militarians who actually teach the team how to behave in such conditions, how to react when they see the danger. And it was a question of 5 seconds, because when they saw the drone, they were putting animals in the car and they just jumped out and were able to survive. One dog suffered. She was in the hospital, but luckily she's alive and everything is fine with her right now. Also, I want to mention here that in 2022, each 6 demand which we had about evacuation of animals came from people who refused to evacuate because they didn't want to leave animals. It was about just people who owned animals, or just some neighbors who saw the animals which were left, and they kind of started to take care of them and took this responsibility. This is another project, our veterinarian mission. We bring veterinarians to the front line, and sometimes people don't see, and the animal support don't see veterinarians there for like starting from 2022. So if they need some medical help, if they suffer from the illness and they need an operation, there's no way they can find the solution. That's why it is very much needed project we're having. Humanitarian aid and other help to shelters and volunteers is going on as well. And besides working here in Ukraine and saving those who we can save, we make this Stop Ecocide Ukraine campaign all over the world, just to show the world what is happening here in Ukraine. Like the demonstrations which you see here, and on this slide you can see kind of creative our way to to make people listen to us and to find another language to tell them about what is happening here. Like in New York, you can see this bullet, and there was a story about the bull which is running from the Ecocide caused by Russia. And on the right, you can see the nest, which is made with the anti-tank hedgehogs, and it tells the story about the birds, which originally lived in Ukraine, but now they cannot nest on those territories and they have to find new homes and they fly to other areas in Ukraine and in Europe. So yes, this is the work we're having, and our topic was about what is happening right now with animals and what is happening after. I don't have any slide about after because actually we're really far from talking about what will be happening after the war. For sure, we will have a lot of work with the reconstruction, a lot of work with national parks to renew the ecosystems, to help species survive, and so on. But now we face the death which is happening right now and all the danger. So we are totally focused on what is happening right now and right here. Some contacts of mine, you're really very welcome to reach. And thank you for your attention. I'm here. If you have any questions and we have the spot for this later, I will be really glad to answer.
Thank you very much, Ola. We move forward to our second speaker, Tanya Richardson. Please, Tanya, the floor is yours.
Okay, that's great, thanks. So the focus of my talk will be on one kind of animal, social insects, commonly known as Western honeybees or Apis mellifera linnea, and their roles in commercial beekeeping and agricultural livelihoods in Ukraine, and particularly Transcarpathia and Kharkiv. So first I'll talk about some long-term anthropological research that I've done about breeding, conserving, and trading Carpathian honeybees. Then I'll say a few words about the impact of war on beekeeping in eastern Ukraine. Beekeeping in Ukraine is a very diverse sector, and there's people more qualified than me to speak about it. But just to give you a sense of it, there were, before the full-scale invasion, some 234,000 beekeepers. Now, or as in 2025, 187,000. Beekeepers have apiaries of different sizes, specializations, and styles. The vast majority practice beekeeping with movable frame hives, what is known as modern or rational beekeeping. Specializations vary according to region. So on the one hand, you have beekeepers in the honey belt in central and eastern southern Ukraine, where small apiaries of 70 to 100 hives can generate tons of honey from the vast sunflower and canola fields. And these provide a significant source of cash income in rural communities where there aren't a lot of opportunities. On the other hand, you have oblasts like Transcarpathia, where until the full-scale invasion, beekeepers' main income came from selling honeybee queens and packages, right? So small sort of starter colony. Their honey harvests are quite irregular and small. Paid pollination services like you have in the United States and Canada are relatively rare, although they do exist. Ukraine also has a lot of apicultural scientists in universities and academies of science, and some of those are the focus of my research. So a few notes about honeybees. So they're interesting for social scientists of human-animal relations because of the ways in which they scramble nature society, wild domestic, cultivated wild distinctions, and which are the foundation of modern thought, social organization, and land management. So as social insects who fly in search of pollen and nectar, they disregard property or other human created administrative boundaries, including international borders. Beekeepers are also dependent on and affected by the environments that surround them, whether these are industrial agricultural fields of canola and sunflower, black locust shelter belts that protect these fields, managed and unmanaged forests, floodplains, subalpine meadows, and others. So a common starting point for thinking about honeybees is to recognize them as domestic, right? So domashny or sviski, but not fully domesticated or domashny, right? And this is because 150 years or so of selective breeding has not fundamentally altered their physiology or biology. They are regulated as an agricultural animal and even industrial organism, but they can live without humans in forests and elsewhere. So in Ukraine, the fact that beekeeping law specifies that beekeepers should work with one of three Aboriginal populations as another interesting dimension. Honeybees have distinct subspecies, which in turn have distinct populations that evolved in particular environments. Aboriginal population identifies honeybee types that evolved over thousands of years on the territory of Ukraine. So these are known as Ukrainian steppe bees, Carpathian bees, and Palesian bees, and they have Latin equivalents on the screen. So the legal category of Aboriginal positions these honeybees as akin to endangered species, right, in need of conservation, but for the purposes of apiculture, right, enhancing apiculture. So this actually opens the doors to national parks and preserves to put them in the same category as the wild endangered species and to support conservation. So my research project is about the history of researching and breeding honeybees in Transcarpathia or Zakarpatska Oblast, and the ways in which conserving them has been tied to the sale of queens and packages outside of Transcarpathia to beekeepers in other parts of Ukraine, Russia, Moldova, Uzbekistan, and elsewhere. So this has involved long-term field work over many years, spending time with beekeepers in their apiaries and their home labs on expeditions, and mainly in Ukraine, but also in Moldova. So this research began actually in the Danube Delta in 2012, 2013, when I learned that Akulina and Vasil Fedorenko, employees of the Danube Biosphere Reserve, earn more money from the sale of honey and packages than from their salaries and pensions, and that some of their success was tied to the fact that they regularly bought Carpathian queens, honeybee queens, from breeders in Transcarpathia. They were concerned, however, because their relative in their town had switched to working with another kind of bee, the controlled hybrid known as a buckfast bee. And because bees mate in the air, when their queens mated with their relatives' drones, the character of their bees changed. They were also concerned about the continued existence of Carpathian bees because of the challenges Transcarpathian researchers faced because of the absence of funding for their work. So it's also interested because a large EU-funded study dedicated to researching honeybee diversity as part of broader efforts to increase honeybee resilience and sustain beekeeping livelihoods did not really pay attention to Ukraine. And one place that they missed, where conservation has been going on for decades, is Transcarpathia. So in the 1960s, Soviet scientists and technicians from Russia, Central Ukraine, and Transcarpathia have worked to conserve what they identified as an Aboriginal population. And they did this because the bees had characteristics that were valuable for beekeeping. So this occurred as part of a wider Soviet policy of developing package beekeeping and conserving local bees. Both were considered to be important for making apiaries more productive in the Soviet Union and enabling the expansion of beekeeping in Siberia and in Central Asia. So because of this, since the 1970s, Transcarpathia's beekeeping economy has had this strong focus on package beekeeping and queen rearing. So in other words, beekeepers made most of their income, or have made most of their income from selling packages and a smaller number from selling queens. So in Transcarpathia, then the war's full-scale invasion, Russia's full-scale invasion, main impact was not the destruction of bees and killing of beekeepers as it was in eastern Ukraine, but rather the loss of markets and clients in Russia and in eastern Ukraine. So honeybee breeders have been able to reorient to Moldova, Romania, Hungary, but the demand for packages is much lower, leading many beekeepers to shrink the size of their apiary. There have also been other kinds of domino effects, such as more swarming and the increase of mite populations. Researchers from the Department for the Reproduction and Selection of Carpathian Honeybees of the Prokopovich Institute in Ukraine's Academy of Sciences, who are the focus of my research, they continue to do, all along, they continue to do what honeybee researchers call conservation through utilization. That is, they do this with below subsistence wages and with no funding. Since the 1990s, they have supported this research through the income they make from their own apiaries. They have been focused on conserving 4 types of Carpathian honeybees, on which you can see on the screen here, named after places in Transcarpathia. So a lot of their work is involved in sort of routine selective breeding practices that's focused on maintaining them, preventing inbreeding, and also improving them so they have characteristics that make them desirable to commercial beekeepers. So their conservation efforts are linked to markets for queens in different countries. Preventing hybridization of the bees is more challenging because beekeepers, even in Transcarpathia, have started to experiment with different kinds of bees, such as the buckfast, Italian, or Carniolan, because they think they'll bring more honey. Hybridization happens very easily, as I said, because the bees mate in the air. So honeybee breeders therefore create isolated mountain apiaries, sometimes in the mountains and other parts of Ukraine on islands, to try to reduce the encounters between queens and drones they wish they would avoid. Still, they cannot know where the drones are, and this is particularly true if there's lots living in tree hollows, or if somebody has placed a hive somewhere where they don't know. So there are complex, what I call voluminous socialities involved in arranging these 3-dimensional breeding spaces. I'd like to highlight one really interesting initiative that began before the full-scale invasion and has continued during it. In 2000, so this is a very interesting cooperative initiative between the Beekeeping Institute, the Siniver National Park, and the Kolochava Territorial Hromada, which is located in Siniver National Park. So these concerns began to intensify in 2017-18 when some mountain beekeepers were worried about their fellow beekeepers working with other bees and hybridizing the bees in the mountains. The researchers were also worried about this. And out of conversations among them grew this idea to create a program focused on trying to recreate a population of Carpathian bees in the Kolochava Territorial Hromada and the Terebia River Valley. So in contrast to their previous work, the researchers were working actively with local beekeepers, right? Before that, they had mainly focused on that kind of work had been informal. Because one of the key active beekeepers, Vasil Betsa, worked in the national park, he was able to help make this informal arrangement with the park, whereby the park gave a space and electric fence to keep out the bears. Then the research Victor Pop, one of the honeybee researchers who has a very big queen breeding operation and honey production operation. He did the selection work and organized the mating station. Vasil, the beekeepers then provide brood for the rearing of queens, and they provide drone-producing families for the mating area as well. And Vasil Betsa serves as a kind of mediator, and he also does a lot of the maintenance work of the mating area. So there is some success here over these. This has continued to work through the full-scale invasion. Researchers have continued to do the measurement. Beekeepers receive the queens, and you can see a picture on the screen here. So the beekeepers are happy with the bees that they're receiving, and the researchers are happy that the bees are starting to be more like proper Carpathians. But it's a very fragile situation because it's unfunded. It relies on volunteer labor. And often Victor and Vasil need to prioritize work that actually brings in income. So they dream of state support, excuse me, for their project, to pay a small subsidy to beekeepers and to a salary to Betsa so that he could actually run it. So right now, it's based a lot on their efforts, and if one of them cannot perform them, then this thing might fall apart, right? So to turn then to the last part of my presentation, then I wanted to share a few notes from beekeeping in Eastern Ukraine, mainly Kharkiv, but also Poltava. This is based on interviews that I did for a short article that I wrote about the impact of war on interspecies relations in 2023. So it's not the central focus of my research, but I do this work also to remind myself of what's happening in other parts of Ukraine. And so I'm grateful to the people on the screen here for talking to me about this. So Kharkiv provides a stark contrast to Transcarpathia because its bees, beekeepers, and lands experienced occupation and liberation and the 2024 Russian offensive, and because the front is there, right? The front line is there. So it illustrates flux, fragility, and uncertainty, which are sort of words that I kind of use to interpret the experience of the beekeepers who've talked to me. So in the first year of the war, beekeepers were killed during occupation, right? Bees were directly killed by missile strikes, by tanks running over the bees. They were killed by soldiers who opened up the hives to take the honey and then broke up the hives to burn them to keep warm, right? So those are just some examples of how bees died as a result of that sort of being right on the front line. They also died because some are kept in houses, overwintering houses, which need to be opened in the spring. And when some beekeepers had to flee, so they were unable to open the houses, and the bees were stuck inside and could not get out. Occupation and liberation left a lot of land in eastern Kharkiv mined. So this limited the planting in the first year of crops, such as sunflower and canola, that are the source of the large volume of honey and the income that beekeepers make. So in 2022, the honey harvest was low because not as many fields could be planted because of mining. But demining has enabled more planting to take place and for some of the forage to be expanded. And I guess the other point I wanted to make about this is that the invasion caused other challenges in terms of pests, right? So I've mentioned varroa mites. These are a big concern for beekeepers. They're a constant presence and a constant struggle to manage, right? They can cause a colony to die over winter, and they serve as the vector for other diseases. So in 2023, because a lot of colonies had been abandoned or swarmed, and there was some excitement that some of these had survived and that they were thriving. And there was interest in this because of breeding for varroa resistance, right? That they might be colonies that you could put into breeding programs and that could expand or enhance bees' ability to withstand them. But at the same time, it meant like because there were so many untreated, there were colonies that didn't withstand it. They died and mites moved on. So Alexander Kalashnikov noted that he had to treat a lot more frequently in order to control his mite populations than other beekeepers didn't have the funds to buy them or could not actually access treatments, and so they faced more. Some of their colonies died. So to end, I wanted to share a couple of recent conversations I had sort of in preparation for this talk with Ludmila and with Alexander. With Dennis and with Yevhen as well. And all of them noted that the number of beekeepers in these regions in Poltava and in Kharkiv has been reduced. And that is those that were maybe not fighting or had not left before. The constant drone attacks and missile attacks just proved too much for some. So they moved to safety. That's one thing that all of them had noted. The other thing that Alexander noted is that if you're a beekeeper and you stay, you have to invest a lot in autonomy. So we heard earlier about that Olha has these electricity. We know that Ukrainians have with this horrific strikes on infrastructure, don't have access to electricity. They have to, if you want to stay in Kharkiv and be a beekeeper, you need to buy generators to be able to power your honey extractors and your incubators and other equipment. Ludmila has stayed to conduct her selection work. And they cannot enact all of their strategies in their selection program because of sort of limited mobility. But they have been able to access the island that they take their bees to mate on. So beekeeping under fire raises questions about impact of the actual emissions from the explosions and the sound on the bees. And so, this adds another factor to trying to understand what's happening with your bees and bee health. And so Denis Soldatov, the head of the Kharkiv Association of Beekeepers, is actually trying to gather money to be able to study these impacts in Kharkiv, which has been this kind of site where you have all this happening all together. At the same, and Ludmila herself described a moment when she was working with her bees on an apiary and a missile landed nearby, and the way in which the bees went silent right at that moment. Just to kind of end then, a lot of discussions around animals, including discussions around bees, highlight their vulnerability, their fragility, right, in the face of a kind of an additional complicating factor, right? In the case of bees, where beekeepers are dealing not only with agricultural chemicals and pests and climate change, but also these missile strikes. But I was actually struck by one of Ludmila's statements to me in a conversation that we had, which sort of to me I found interesting because it sort of suggested that it's actually the human partner and the human honeybee relationship that is more fragile than bees, right? We're sort of, because of the crisis of the pollinator crisis, we're accustomed to thinking of bees as particularly vulnerable, but here in a war zone, it may be actually the beekeepers who are the vulnerable ones, right? And she mentioned, of course, the stress on the nervous system from these constant strikes, from the constant air raid sirens. Alexander mentioned how he has eye problems, but because of the stress, not because of anything else. So I will just leave it there then, and just thanks to the organizers for the invitation, and thanks to the people who I've cited today who've given me their time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And now I would like to give a word to Arita Holmberg. Please, Arita. I would also encourage our audience to write comments.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and to the organizers for holding this seminar. And let's see now if I manage to. Yes, I'm going to set this talk in the literature about security and war, and tell you a little bit about previous research, and also my own research in collaboration with the colleagues, focusing on examples from Ukraine, and also at the end talk a little bit about how and if and how animals could be included in security policy practices, and what happens if they are not. So let's start with this context then, because I think it's important to understand where I'm coming from, so to say. So traditionally, when we study war in political science and security studies, there's a focus on states as sectors, military capacities, defense capacities, and interactions between these sectors. And usually the focus is on the material resources and different power relations. So how can we then in this context include animals? And the way that I have approached this is through critical security studies and also feminist perspectives. And also my colleague Maria Ruiz Carreras have written from critical media communication perspectives. And these different perspectives ask then different questions, look for different actors. Where are the individuals, the different groups, the environment, nature, and also animals in these contexts? And also this type of literature focus not only on high level politics and exceptional situations, but also look at more everyday interactions and experiences of safety and security. Then there is also the literature about crisis management and catastrophes, disasters, and there's a slightly more focus upon organizational and bureaucratic, administrative issues, and also you can find an individual-based perspective in that literature. So if we start to look at the more question of war and how animals have been approached in the study of war, the biggest literature we find in military history, actually, because their animals have been used instrumentally, mostly horses, but also dogs. And this is set then in a traditional war-focused setting. And still, although this is a very traditional literature, you can find, because it's many historians who do this research, that they also focus upon social relations and the importance of relations with animals during war as a form of therapeutic relation for soldiers. For instance, historians can approach diaries. There are some good examples of that, considering Finland, for instance, and the role of horses during the Second World War, and how the relationships between soldiers and animals evolved. But what this literature still tell us is that animals are affected by war, and the critical perspectives that I mentioned previously are growing, although we see less of research about the animals in the modern wars. If we look at the literature concerning crisis, disasters and catastrophes, we find more of these human-animal relations. It's quite familiar that many people don't want to leave their animals, and this creates different types of trauma, and still animals are abandoned with negative consequences, not only for the animals themselves, but also for humans, because if animals are roaming in different wild areas where they are usually not, there can be spreads of diseases and other impacts. We see also, like Olga talked about, that there are many voluntary efforts mobilized to evacuate animals and care for animals. But it's clear that the effects are negative, as we also saw from Olga's examples, both in war and in crisis of different kinds. But states are beginning to realize that these questions are important, not only for the animals themselves, but also for humans, and to receive legitimacy for different types of civil emergency planning. For instance, within the US, these were changed after the Hurricane Katrina, in order to more include animals within these policies. And then I'm going to talk about 3 articles that I have written together, both myself and together with different researchers. It's Javiera Ortega Cepeda, Maria Ruiz Carreras, and these are open access, so if you want to know more about the details, you can look into them. And the first one I'm talking about here is about animals as refugees. And this is a more of a conceptual article. Together with Dorota Lagrotska, I was planning to and applying for funding regarding this topic, but we were not successful in that application, but I took part of this and then wrote a more conceptual article about this. And here we see with the example of people fleeing the war in Ukraine, that they took animals with them, and that the EU recommended EU member states to allow for the entering of animals that were accompanying these refugees. So there were a kind of exception mobilized, because usually there should have been quarantine regulations for these animals. So we see that together with their humans, animals became also subjects of security in these situations. And we also see from this example a quite unusual event, that the animal security become a transnational issue. And there are then different aspects of this that we can approach analytically, both from the political, organizational, and more empathetic perspectives, and how different types of interactions or encounters could be mobilized as humans and animals move across borders. So that's the first perspective that is more conceptual. And then we have also done, Javiera, Maria and I, in various constellations, research about or visual analysis of Instagram accounts in Ukraine. And the first one is looking at how animals have been used as resources in war communication. And we looked then at the account Ukraine UA, and we see that this is a general account that gives all types of experiences, communicates different experiences from all of the country. So we wanted to approach a more general account in order to see whether there were room for animals within this context and how they were portrayed. And we see that animals are portrayed as victims, and we think that this is usually to collect empathy, and animals becomes resources in that sense. They are also used as diplomats. We see here one of the most prominent diplomats, the mine-clearing dog Patron. And we have also one article that I'm not talking to, or a chapter that I'm not talking about today, that is devoted only to this dog Patron, because we think that he has also his own Instagram account, and he has what we call an exceptional animal agency in this war context that stretches also across borders and in very many different roles. And then we also find that animals are portrayed as war heroes. Usually it's rescue dogs, but there are also other animals like I think there was also a rat who was mine clearing in this context. And finally, there are a type of animal influencers that are acting as fundraisers in this context. And the third article that I was going to present to you is actually still under review. And what we find here is that we are looking for, this is the same, almost the same image that Olga was showing you. And we were here looking for, we were struck by the fact that we usually only found images of animals that were pets close to humans' everyday life. So we wanted to problematize what animals are visible and invisible in war. So this article is about this topic. And then, as I said, the animals that have the closest relations to human are the most frequent in this data set. There are a few examples of wild animals. There are some that are like symbols for Ukraine, but usually their lives are pictured as somehow unspoiled and not always affected by the war. There are different examples, but that was the most frequent one. We see very little livestock. This is one of the few images of livestock, and no laboratory animals. They are usually very invisible in most media imagery. but what we conclude also from this analysis is that animals are, as Olga said, affected by the war. They are abandoned, and we also see, and I think there is going to be much more debate about this in the future, and about how the environment is affected, and also how this affects animals living there. And we also see in both of these articles the large amount of voluntary efforts that are mobilized, that we also recognize from previous research. It was not the primary focus of the study, but we note it. How could we then include animals in security and defense policies? So this is a question that sometimes when critical perspectives are employed, researchers are quite hesitant in arguing for including animals within these structures, because they are quite traditional, and sometimes it's argued that it could be negative to be part of these structures. But I argue that every effort at extending efforts that can improve security, although it's limited and maybe it's not the ideal that we would ideally prefer, that they are still better than nothing. And if we start moving in this direction of including animals and nature within security frameworks, then we can also step by step change the status of animals in society and laws related to this. And in practice then, what is needed is preparation and planning, and also in the European Union, we see that this has actually become a consequences of this transnational movements of animals from Ukraine. Then we had to prepare for housing that could include animals, for instance. So now we are better prepared for this, because if something else happens, this is likely to be a pattern that repeats itself. We know that these relations are important. And also what is actually developing now in Sweden, I saw just last year that they are building an institute for veterinary disaster medicine. So then we can draw lessons about what injuries are affecting animals due to different consequences. For instance, during earthquakes or floodings, there may be certain injuries, and in wars there are other injuries. So then we can veterinaries can help assist animals in better ways. And what I want to say also is that in some contexts this may sound radical to talk about these issues in the traditional context, but if we look at the practice, we also see many examples of people working within civil protection services and also the military that actually try to help also animals in the best way that they can. So in practice, it may not be so far away in the future, so to say. And finally, I want to say also that if there is no change and if animals are not included, there may be resistance and opposition towards these civil emergency structures, and when people and animals don't get protection, they put themselves in danger, and this also increase risks, for instance, for first responders that try to help in different ways. And I also think that there is a great risk for trauma and negative memories related to this that actually stay and affect legitimacy in different ways. And in Sweden, we have very much of quite a regulated and structured civil defense system. And here we have these questions, for instance, regarding different responsibilities. So then there may also be discussions and opposition regarding these questions if there is no planning, so to say, beforehand, and if animals are not taken into account. So that was my last slide. I was quite fast, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all three of you for excellent multifaceted presentations. And there are more seminars in the pipeline. So check out our Facebook page and keep yourself updated. Thank you very much. Have a great day, evening, morning.